Saluton, bonvenon al Otaku evoluado. Mia nomo estas Pingveno Veron. Hodiaŭ ni estos kovrante la klasika nokto de la galaxia fervojo. Hi, welcome to Otaku Evolution. I'm Penguindrum. Today we'll be covering the classic Night on the Galactic Railroad. In 1922, a writer named Kenji Miyazawa suffered the loss of his young sister, with whom he was close. Devastated by this loss, he went on a trip by train to Sakhalin, Russia, and shortly after began work on a novel based on that trip. The classic children's book he wrote wasn't published until after he died, but was extremely popular. The story, Night on the Galactic Railroad, was adapted into an anime movie in 1985. The film starred Mayumi Tanaka and Chika Sakamoto as two best friends, Giovanni and Campanella, who live in a picturesque village and end up on a train that takes them on a trip through the stars and to a fantastical destination. Oh, and they're cats for some reason. Giovanni is just a poor boy from a poor family, and while his father is gone on a trip, has to take care of his sick mother and sister. Because he has to tend to so many tasks to help feed his family, Giovanni will be too busy for much of his village's Star Festival. After being teased by other children, he pauses to reflect on a hill, but soon finds himself on a strange train with his friend Campanella. Their travels take them to a strange station where people's belongings are left behind, have them meeting excavators at a bizarre dig site, converse with somebody who makes confections from birds, help a blind wire operator, meet children who contemplate the meaning of happiness, and teach them a fable about a scorpion in flames. And then, they stop by heaven? Finally, at the Coalsack Nebula, a fateful decision is made that changes Giovanni forever. Look, I'll level with you all. As layered as this movie is with imagery and symbolism, it's pretty light on an actual plot. I basically described the whole thing in a couple of paragraphs. It's 2 hours, but it's not narrative intensive. It's a lot of wondrous whimsy and emotional build-up throughout. And let's face it, the big plot twist is pretty obvious for anyone with experience with fiction in the past couple of decades. Hey, Giovanni and Campanella are on a strange intergalactic train and stop by heaven on the way. Why, it's almost as if one or both of them are... So yeah, you get the picture. But that isn't the point. Anyone with one or two firing synapses could suss out that before the ending. It's all in the execution, the art of the story. And in that regard, well, I don't feel like I'm particularly well equipped to do it justice. But what the hell, I'll try anyway. Much could be made about the spiritual religious overtones of the movie. The movie is not very subtle when it comes to using Christian imagery, and even the song Nearer My God to Thee. The apple, often seen as the forbidden fruit of Scripture, is also in a prominent scene right after the discussion of faith and forbearance. A couple of scenes later, a little girl gives a parable on self-sacrifice for the happiness of others. A later scene still sees a train stop at what appears to be heaven, with a giant Christian cross welcoming pilgrims. However, there doesn't seem to be any overt Christian angle to the movie itself. At the end of the movie, Campanella doesn't disappear into heaven, he just disappears. Surely by the standards set in the film, he is as deserving of heaven as anyone else in the movie, but Miyazawa's story doesn't endorse Christianity as the one path. It's merely used as a device to frame the theme of sacrifice and a search for spiritual fulfillment.
I'm responsible for these two children. Their father left them in my care. I am their tutor, and he would want me to try and save them, so I began to push forward. But I thought about what would bring them true happiness. What if I could truly save them, even if it cost them their lives? Allowing us to die would be my sin alone. The best thing for them might be to go now, together, to be with God. Better than to be saved this way. But I remembered that it was my duty to save their lives, so I pushed ahead. I got desperate and I started shouting for them to get these children into the lifeboats. But as I saw mothers say goodbye to their children forever, and as I saw fathers stand silently by, desperately trying to hold back tears, I made my decision. I decided that we would float together as long as possible. So I held them, and the three of us waited for the ship to sink.
I'm not sure what happiness really is, but if you keep to the true path and listen to your heart, even under terrible conditions, you can climb any mountain, no matter how high. I believe we can all reach true happiness, one step at a time.
Yes, I agree. To reach true happiness, we must serve God, even if we do so from the depths of our lonely despair. Huh?
Earlier in the film, there's a scene where the blind wireless operator tries to pick up a message being sent into the void, which turns out to be "Nearer my God to thee." He seems like a kind man, but he doesn't understand the message. He can only see darkness and hears mostly static, so he doesn't understand it. There's clearly some appeal to the reader of the story, or in this case the viewer, to themselves make a spiritual call. I'm pretty irreligious myself, though I'm open to the idea of a higher power on a theoretical and/or poetical level. Maybe I'm just interpreting it that way because of my own biases against organized religion, but I didn't feel like I was being preach-smacked. Not any more than Royal Space Force, anyway. Because all of the events on the train occur in a very dreamlike fashion, there's this interesting thing the narrative does by incorporating elements of Giovanni's day into the journey. I didn't pick up on it at first, but there are parallels between the events just before the trip and the trip itself. For instance, Giovanni's desire to go to the Star Festival, despite its many chores and errands. At school, he spots a map of the constellations, including some of the places he visits on the journey. He later sees a similar map, albeit an advanced one, in the lap of Campanella on their trip, having not known where he got it. Giovanni mentions a toy train Campanella owns that he enjoys to his mother, perhaps contributing to his vision/dream setting. Another parallel is that Giovanni's teacher puts fossils his father brought back on his trips on display at the school. On the train journey, Giovanni and Campanella encounter a strange archaeologist who resembles the teacher, digging out of pure research instead of display. The researcher reasons that the perception of the fossils change depending on who looks at them. Just like the abstract scene, the man pushes for an abstract interpretation of the fossils, a normally purely scientific purview. This can be seen as a reflection of Giovanni's emotions. While the teacher sees the fossils as great to display, it makes the boy long for his father's return. Another early encounter sees Giovanni running into a man with a cane who drops his train ticket. He feels around with his cane a bit. Later we see the blind wireless operator struggling around in a train car, helped by Giovanni and Campanella. I might be reaching a little with this one, but they seem similar enough that Giovanni may have incorporated the encounter into his dream journey. Giovanni's family is not as well off as Campanella's, and so many of the things he sees along his journey probably come from a longing for more. The train of Campanella's he admires, for instance. Giovanni enjoys the simple things others might take for granted, and so when he dreams, he doesn't dream for great wealth, but for small things a child might enjoy. Giant walnuts, candy, a multitude of apples. Small, simple things, but in great quantities. I believe it's these simple things he uses to fill the void, like wanting the train trip with his friend to never end. Besides their friendship, there's another connection there because Giovanni's father is good friends with Campanella's. And maybe the emphasis Giovanni places on their relationship comes from missing his father.
What? What is it?
I didn't think we'd get a chance to go off on our own tonight. I mean, did you, Campanella?
What do you mean? You thought we'd be with everyone from school?
No, not that. Forget it. Look, those must be the fields of heaven outside.
Uh-huh.
An interesting thing to note, in the English version it's Veronica Taylor and Crispin Freeman playing Giovanni and Campanella, Ash Ketchum and Alucard. Even weirder is that the Japanese voice of Giovanni is the voice of Krillin in Dragon Ball. The voice of the main character in a show called Galaxy Express 999, with similar elements, is Masako Nozawa, the voice of Goku. So, Goku and Krillin both travel by space train. Neat. The central theme of the movie is sacrifice for the sake of others' happiness. To illustrate this is the parable of the scorpion fire.
The scorpion killed other bugs and ate them. Then one day, a weasel found him. The scorpion fled and fell into a deep well. He was trapped and knew he'd die. Then he thought to himself, how often have I eaten other creatures? And now, the one time that I was prey, I fled in utter terror. And look what came of that. I'll die in this well, alone. Life is filled with uncertainty. Why didn't I accept my fate? If I had freely given my life to the weasel, I would have given him another day of life. But now my death will help no one. I am useless. Dear Lord, I beg of you, look into my heart and hear my prayer. In my next life, don't let me waste myself. Let me use my body for the true happiness of everyone in the world. And then the scorpion burst into flame, a brilliant crimson glow. And by the light of his burning body, he lit up in the night forever.
At the end of the movie, we discover that Campanella has given his life to save a classmate's. Giovanni realizes his dream was more than just a dream. At the site where Campanella disappeared into the water, Giovanni vows to be like the scorpion and burn for the sake of others like his friend did.
I vow to be like that scorpion. Dear Lord, hear my prayer. For the true happiness of everyone, I will let my body burn 100 times over. Campanella, no matter where I go, we'll always be together.
It's a solemn ending to be sure, but it both makes sense because of the theme of self-sacrifice and within the context of Giovanni's feelings about his father. Campanella's father, in the face of his son's untimely death, assures Giovanni that his father will return soon, saying he received a letter from him that he was doing fine. Now, he could just be trying to comfort his son's friend after the tragedy, but that's sort of the point. Campanella's thoughts turn not to his father, but wanting to live for others like his friend did. Instead of thinking about his own needs, he promises to see to the needs of others. This was a dense film, and it's possible I've missed or misinterpreted some points. To be honest, I originally only wanted to watch it to understand Mawaru Penguindrum a little better, since it references this specific version of the story. But it's a great movie in its own right, and I think Ikuhara had the right idea in referencing it. Next week on Otaku Evolution, a holiday treat, as I examine another story of selfless sacrifice, Gundam 0080 War in the Pocket. See ya!